Here is video 4.1, and our goal today is to be able to write equations in slope-intercept form. The last section that we talked about was where we took an equation that's already in slope-intercept form, we identified the slope and the intercept, and then we graphed them. This is going to be a little bit different. We're still using the same equation. So remember that slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m and b are numbers. So m could be like 4. So for an example, y equals, we'll do 1/3 x plus 2. So this, we have m as 1/3, that's our slope, and b is our y-intercept, and that's 2. What we're going to use today is the slope equation. So this means whenever we have 2 points or a table or a graph or anything like that, we have 2 spots, 2 solutions, we can use that to identify what the slope is. So that slope equation is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. It might be a little confusing for now for what that would be, and we'll talk about it. But really what this translates to is the rise over the run. That's rise over run. This is our slope equation. We just talked about the vocab for the day. The goal is to be able to write equations in slope-intercept form, so in the form y equals mx plus b. What we are going to talk about the rest of the time in this video is we're going to talk about the steps, step 1, 2, and 3 for writing an equation in slope-intercept form. Then we are going to be talking about, okay, how do I write it when I have the slope and the y-intercept? Just given the slope and y-intercept, how do I write the equation? That's super easy. You guys will crush it. And then we're going to say, well, what if we're given a graph? How do I write my equation in slope-intercept form? Then we're going to say, well, what if we're just given 2 points? How do I graph it? And then we're going to say, well, what if I'm given a whole table? How do I write that equation? And then lastly, we're going to talk about function notation. Now, here's the awesome part about this lesson. This part, super easy. It's just plugging it in. This part, once you understand the slope equation right here, is easy. This part down here is all the same. We do A the same as we do B, and we do B the same as we do function notation. So all those last three are like the exact same thing. Here is our steps. So step 1, identify the slope. Depending on the question, we might do this in different ways. We need to identify the slope. Step 2 is we need to identify the y-intercept. Step 3 is plug them into the equation. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. So if I'm given the slope and the y-intercept, being able to write the equation is super easy. If I have a slope of 5 and I have a y-intercept of -3, well, slope is my m and y-intercept is my b, so I'm just going to write y equals 5x, because 5 is m, minus 3, because that's my b, that's my y-intercept. So take a look at the equation here. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. The weird thing is like, well, wait, you said it's plus b, right? So yeah, it's plus b, but if b is going to be negative, like in this case it's -3, we write it as -3. Because I could put plus minus, but that's just more to write. It doesn't really change the equation. So it's minus when b is negative. Here's another example. A lot of times we like to write our slope as a fraction. So what if I have one that's like 6 sevenths is my slope, and then my y-intercept is 3. My equation, y equals mx plus b. y equals m, which is 6/7, x plus b. This time, since it's a positive 3 for our y-intercept, we wrote plus 3. So this is an equation that starts at the y-intercept at 3. So I go up 3 on my y-intercept, and then it'd go up 6 over 7. It would rise 6, run 7, and this would be a positive slope going up from left to right. So what about when I'm given the graph? Remember, our steps say our whole goal here is identify the slope and then identify the y-intercept. What I want you to notice here for the graph is that if I'm given 2 points, secretly I'm also given 2 points here. So these are really all the same thing as soon as I find 2 points. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to pull out my ordered pairs, which are 4, 3, and 0, 1. Now, you got to think back to about 2 sections ago. We talked about our y-intercept and our x-intercept. And for the y-intercept, we said the y-intercept is the y value when x is 0. So for A, which one of these is my y-intercept? Well, here, x is 0. If x is 0, my y-intercept is that other value. So I know that my y-intercept is 1. I just identified my y-intercept. Now identifying the slope is just using that same equation that we have up here. We plug it in and see what we come out. The 1 and 2 are referencing that I have 2 points. So I have point 1 here and I have point 2 here. That's point 1. This is point 2. Doesn't matter which order I put them in as long as I keep it straight with which one's which. So my slope is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to do some color coding here so we can see where those values come in. So this is the x value of the second equation. See how that went there? Well, think about y2. That means this is the y value of the second equation, which is 1. So that's going to be its own color. Then this value right here is calling for the y value of the first equation. That's 3. Which is not going to be red because that would not be helpful. Goodness. So this has its own color. It's the y value of the first equation. Here I have the x value of the first equation. Take a minute and really look at that pattern. y2 minus y1, red minus blue. It's the y values. x2 minus x1, 0 minus 4. I'm going to plug in those values. 1 minus 3, 0 minus 4. Now what do I get? 1 minus 3 is negative 2. 0 minus 4 is negative 4. Now I'm going to simplify my equation. Negative and a negative make a positive, and I can reduce 2/4 into 1/2. Here's my slope. This is the hardest thing that we have to do for this whole section, is plugging in those things. The important thing to note is that you have to find your 2 points. You got to say this is point 1, this is point 2, then it's plug it in and reduce. We can also check here. What's nice on the graph is I can see, wait, rise 1, run 2. Rise 1, run 2. That's nice, and we can do that on our graph, not a problem. When we get down to the points, though, we need to make sure we know how to do this part. So my y-intercept is 1. That's where it crosses the y-axis. It's because my x value is 0. And my slope is 1/2. If I think to my steps, identify slope, identify y-int, and then plug them into the equation. Y equals m, which is my slope, which is 1/2, x plus b, so plus 1, because 1 is my y-intercept. Here we go with b. If you feel confident, take a minute and try this one, pause the video, and then go back, see how you did. I'm going to do this one, though, right now. Here, I need to identify my 2 points. So I have point 1, which is 0, -1. Doesn't matter which one I do, as long as I identify that one of them is my 1 point and the other one is my 2 point. So my other equation is going to be 5, -3. Now 0, -1, the x value is 0. When my x value is 0, the other value is going to be my intercept. So y-int is -1. There's my -1. Okay, now to my slope equation. I have y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. I'm going to use the same colors. Y2 means it's the y value of the second equation. Y1 means it's the y value of the first equation, y1. X2 means it's the x value of the second equation. X1 means it's the x value of the first equation. Now I'll plug in those values. -3 minus -1. Notice that it's -3, that's the red, minus from this minus right here, and then -1 from this -1 up here. Notice that those are two negatives right next to each other. X2 is 5, so I have 5 minus 0. -3 minus a negative just means plus, so this turns into -3 plus 1, which is -2. 5 minus 0 is just 5. So my slope this time, I can't reduce 2 and 5 anymore, but there's that negative, so I'm going to write that out front as -2/5. Back that up a little bit so we can fit it all in there. So here is our slope. It's down to 5. So that means if I count here, right, I'm going to go down 2, 1, 2 over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's how I calculate my slope. Here we go. We're going to do the same thing over and over again here. These are really the same steps. I need to find 2 points. I need to say one of this is my 1 point, the other one is my 2 point. and I need to figure out what is my y-intercept. So here we go with A. Here's my point 1. Here's my point 2. My slope equation. Slope equation y2. Here's my second one. Here's the y value. My first one, here's the y value. Second one, x value. First one, x value. So I have -2 minus 3. Then I have 0 minus 8. -2 minus 3 is -5. 0 minus 8 is -8. I can't reduce my fraction 5/8. There's no number that goes into 5 and 8. But I can get rid of the negatives because there's 2 of them. So that reduces to just a positive 5 divided by 8. This got me my slope, but I still need to find my y-int. My y-intercept for this one, all we have to do to find the y-intercept is look for an x value of 0. Is that 0? No. Is this 0? Yes. So my y-int is -2. Now I'm going to plug it into my equation. Y equals mx plus b becomes y equals 5/8 x minus 2, because I put in -2 for b. Here we go with another one. I need to find 2 points. I need to make sure that one of them has an x value of 0. Here I've got options. I know I have to take this one because it's the only one that has an x value of 0. Zero, 2 I'm going to take. And my second point, I get to pick which one I want. It does not matter. We'll get the same slope either way. I'm going to do -1 and 4. If you want to and you feel confident, you can go ahead and do the other one. Use the other points. Use 1, 0 instead of -1, 4. And then see if we come to the same slope value. We should. Finding my slope. y2 minus y1. 4 minus 2. x2 minus x1. -1 minus 0. 4 minus 2 is 2. -1 minus 0 is -1. I have one negative on there, so this is 2 divided by -1. It gets me -2 as an answer. And this is my slope. This is my m. Now when I look at this, I'm looking for the x value of 0. I have an x value 0 right here. That means that this must be my y-int. Now following my steps, the next thing I'm going to do is plug it into my equation. Y equals mx plus b. Here we go with another example. This one's function notation. We learned function notation last chapter, and we learned, okay, well, given an x, I find a y. Given a y, I find an x. This one gives us an x and a y. So we have to pull out 2 points from these. It's super easy because you guys know that there's 2 numbers that this gives me right here. One is an x and the other is a y. And you know that the x value is always in parentheses because function notation follows that pattern of f of x equals y. I would write that up there. Because then you know, well, here's an x, here's a y. Zero comma negative 3. X, y. My other point, point 2. 5, negative 18. My slope formula. Y2 minus y1, that's negative 18, because negative 18 is the y value of my second function, minus negative 3. Then on the bottom I have 5 minus 0. Negative 18 minus negative, that means plus, gets me negative 15. Because I had negative 18 plus 3. And I have 5 minus 0, which is just 5. Again, I reduced my fraction. Negative 15 divided by 5 gets me negative 3. You can even use your calculator for that just to reduce it. I've shown some of you that in your calculator you can plug in any value, any fraction, and it could give you the decimal. Then if you hit second, and then there's a FD with an arrow between them, that's fraction to decimal or decimal to fraction. You can use that and it reduces fractions for you. Here is another one with function notation that I want you to try on your own. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was done with this one. I made a mistake. I'm not finished with this one yet because we need to put it into our equation. I need to find my y-intercept, which means I need to look for when x is 0, which is right here. Then I've got negative 3 as my y-int. So putting in my equation, y equals mx plus b. M is negative 3. And my y-intercept is also negative 3, so this becomes minus 3. We should never ever plug anything for x in for this section, or y. Our answer is an equation, never a number, a whole equation. Y equals negative 3, x minus 3 is an answer here. Here I have another one for you to try, and then I will tell you what equation that you should get. Go ahead and pause the video, and then I'll put the equation up there. Here is what you should get for this equation when you go through finding the slope and the intercept. 2x plus 6 should be your answer. One other thing I want to point out here is that say you're unsure when you get down to it and you're like, I don't know if this is right. You can take these 2 points and check to see if they work. If they work as solutions, you did it right. They both need to work though. So for example, I'd take 3, which is an x value, and plug it in for x. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 6 is 12. 12. If I plug in 0, 0 times 2 is 0. 0 plus 6 is 6. 6. That works. That works for all of our equations. 0, negative 3. 0 times negative 3 is 0. Minus 3 is negative 3. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. Negative 15 minus 3 is negative 18. You guys got this? Remember, your homework is on Clever. So we're back into a Clever, 3 through 18. You got this. This is a really important lesson, and you guys are going to crush it.